Everyone, it's Chuck Johnson here. It is, I want to say it's Thursday, May 12th. It's been a while since I've done a podcast. I hope you like my hat, by the way. I'm officially on the Trump train. I think there's a high likelihood I'm going to be a Trump delegate, or at least a Trump alternate delegate for Cleveland, which I'm definitely looking forward to. Still need to buy my hat, or buy my plane ticket. Instantly. But yeah, I mean, what have I been up to? I went to the East Coast, went to New York, got some business affairs taken in order for Researcher, met with some would-be clients for it, met with some actual clients for it. Essentially ran around New York City for a few days. All went well. Then from there, I went to Boston to see my sister graduate from college and to hang out with my parents, which was exciting. And I saw my 92-year-old grandfather, which was the first time I'd seen him since my grandma died, which was a few months ago, which was a major bummer. Like, don't sign me up for outliving my wife. But yeah, so what is today's podcast about? The other day, I went and participated in one of the most joyless corporate bullshit exercises I've ever participated in. I went to go see, or to participate in a pilot for Comedy Central. I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, Moshe Kasher, but he's like a Jewish comedian, sort of like nailing Woody Allen's Leftovers, sort of situational hipster comic. And he invited me to be on his show, Problematic, which was a pilot that they were doing. And it's kind of, the whole experience is kind of a weird thing, going to do a pilot. Like, you go to this event, there's like a lot that you have to go through. You park way the fuck away from everything. Everything seems kind of like threadbare and torn down, but yet it's also sort of corporate, and yet people are wearing what they want to wear. And anyways, so I went to this thing. Drove down from Fresno to go to LA. Was meeting with some folks in LA anyways, so it's like, all right, fuck it, I'll go to this. And they invited me, and we spent the whole time kind of chatting, about kind of political correctness and censorship and all those things that are like very dangerous and very like, so we say problematic. And the format of the show is essentially Moshe Kasher, this other guy, Bo Burnham, Burham, I guess. He's a comedian. I guess he's from Massachusetts originally. I know he went to St. John's, which was a rival prep school, the one I went to. And he's apparently like some musical guy, does some musical things. I don't know. There was this chick there, like Amy something. I want to say no, Jen. Fuck, what's her name? Jen. I assure you, these guys are like well known or some shit, or at least that's what the Netflix people tell me. Jen Kirkman, that's the name, and Joe DeRosa. And essentially, these guys are like comedians. They're, lefty comedians. They have a sort of view of the world that's kind of progressive, and yet they're doing a show about how political correctness is like causing all this trouble and the context. And it was essentially like taking John Ronson's book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, and trying to do like a show on it. And it kind of didn't work. Like, narratively, it was kind of a weak show. What they did was they interviewed this chick, Talia Jane, I think is her name, Talia Jane. And she was that chick who got fired from Yelp for essentially writing like a fuck you Yelp piece about how she and her how she was homeless and how terrible, or she wasn't homeless, she was worried about other people being homeless and how fucked that was and how terrible it was and blah, 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 blah. Yelp sucks, and how angry she was about all that shit. Now, of course, like, I think this story is like mostly histrionic and bullshit, and said as much, when they finally got to me in the sort of end period. Which, by the way, Moshe Kasher came up to me, and he was like, "No, I'm not going to do that. That's contrived." His earpiece. I don't know what that was about, but it was kind of weird and kind of strange. But anyways, this sort of thing, like, they wanted me to be like the bad guy, the terrible, the racist, the whatever. And of course, I didn't kind of play it along. Like, I was gentlemanly and polite and befriended the crew, many of whom really liked me, and some of whom became Facebook friends of mine afterwards, and who want to start giving me intel about what's really going on in Comedy Central. And so, anyway, so this chick Talia goes up there, kind of like the show is like this huge interview with her, how terrible it is. Yelp is bad. She wants a living wage. She lives in San Francisco, doesn't have a roommate, and frankly, the whiny bitch quality of what she was saying was kind of like hard to deal with. Now, like, look, I'm not against a living wage. I just don't know what a living wage like really is. Does it mean like you get paid a shitload of money? Like, how much money do you get paid? What do you think the actual value of your labor actually is? It's kind of unclear to me. And frankly, San Francisco is an expensive place to live. I don't want to live there. I don't like it. LA is an expensive place to live. Like, there are various places in the country that I think suck, and I don't understand why people want to live in them, and why they live so shittily in them when the rents are like 3,000, 4,000 bucks or whatever. So, long story short, she goes up there. She's kind of a bitch. She's trying really hard to be funny. She's trying really hard to be like witty. It sort of doesn't really work. It was sort of like overwrought and kind of strange. And then they go and they have all these things about how terrible men are who harass women and how they shame them. So Jen Kirkman, who even though she's like 41 years old, apparently is like kind of good looking. I don't know. I didn't really find it myself, but whatever. And she's talking about how she shames guys who like try and ask her out. And they went into this woman, Cards Against Humanity, this woman named Lindsay. Cards Against Harassment, rather, not Cards Against Humanity. And she gives out cards to men who harass women. And she's supposedly like some entrepreneur. Her name's Lindsay. I don't know what her last name is, but she lives in Minneapolis. And apparently, I think they flew her there. Maybe she flew herself there. I don't know. But they were like, trying to cause some shit with me and her. And she tried to cause some shit with me. She was like, oh, you shit all over the floor in college. It's like, no, I didn't. Gawker made that up. I sued them. It was a whole thing. I've never shit over all rape victims. I expose fake rapes. And I believe the truth is the standard. I mean, all the stuff you know from listening to God News podcast, that I believe in using the truth to troll, like fighting power. And so anyway, so they were like trying to cause some shit with me. Now, Moshe Kasher had come up to me earlier, like an hour and a half or so before the show, and he asked me about like all kinds of stuff. He's like, you think Obama's gay? That was sort of the way they were like kind of mocking me. And I was like, well, it's complicated. I mean, Obama joined the gay club in 1979. His mentor, Larry Golden, all but admitted it. Obama had roommates that were gay. He traveled to Pakistan with one of these guys who wound up being gay later on. He's had only 2 girlfriends that we know about. He's told the 2 girlfriends, both of whom deny a sexual relationship. And he's gone at some length to kind of, basically, he's basically a gay guy. Like, let's just, I mean, I guess we could just say it now. And so anyways, he's like trying to like otherize me, trying to make a big deal about that. And he's like, oh, I hear you're like racist and homophobic. I'm like, no, not really, but yeah, I kind of am, like relative to like his standards, right? Everyone's racist, everyone's homophobic. It's like the charge of being a witch when you're a redhead. And I essentially believe in using the internet to like fight for truth and justice in the American way. And I'm not really, I believe in basically like telling the truth. That's what I'm about. So anyways, Talia also was like, oh, you exposed a rape victim. And it's like, no, I've never exposed a rape victim in my life. I've never done that. It's never happened. There's never been a single case in the history of God News where we have exposed and named a rape victim. Period. Never happened. Will never happen. Now, we've exposed a lot of fake rape situations, and I'm proud of the role we play on that and making sure that people get due process. And I'll always fight for due process. I'll always fight for the Bill of Rights, so long as there's a United States of America, or at least in so long as we have this idea of liberties, which of course are all being eroded anyways. It's just a matter of time before they go completely kapoof. It was interesting, there's another woman like by Felicia, I forget the name of it. It's like, hold up, let me pull it up. It's Cards Against here we go. This one, Cards Against Harassment, was like she was like trying to make a big deal about this. Oh, hold up a second. Yeah, so anyways, Yeah, she's apparently like sending some shit out. Anyways, this Lindsay woman, um, yeah, it was kind of interesting. So she like, she accused me falsely of outing a rape victim, which is kind of funny. And I was like, okay, how do you make money? That was the other thing. She was like kind of freaking out. She's like, how do you make money? How do you make money? And I was like, well, I make money. Um, and I'm proud of my accomplishments. And, oh yeah, By Felipe. That was this chick. This chick By Felipe has this account. And apparently like she's got like 2,980 followers. I don't know. It seemed kind of weird. It's like calling out dudes who turn hostile when rejected or ignored. So of course, like what ends up happening in these kind of situations is that some nerdy dude asks out this other dude, tries to ask out this chick. He then gets shamed, and so he's like becomes afraid of women. And of course, the only dudes who end up actually like changing their behavior are like the nerdy dudes. They're not actually the dudes who are like actually the harassers, assuming there are such things as harassers. And no one ever seems to have like an actual definition of harassment. Harassment's basically like stuff we don't like, which is of course like you ask people like, oh, can you define obscenity? And obscenity again, it's like no, we can't define obscenity, but harassment we can define. So, anyways, it was kind of an interesting experience. I mean, they trucked in this whole boatload full of multicultural people, and it was interesting. I mean, gotta say, I had a good time, like chatting with a bunch of people there. Good time chatting with some cast and crew afterwards, and it was just interesting. I mean, it was a very fascinating experience, and it was such a joyless thing. I mean, they reshot a number of things. We had to like pretend to be happier, joking much more. And it was just like, it was very strange. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, you kind of know that Hollywood is Jewish. And again, I've got nothing against the Jews, like, nothing really, anyways. Um, Jews are going to do their Jewish things, like they're going to go and, try and do Woody Allen better, or they're going to try and do certain types of jokes. And, there was jokes about Hitler. What I find annoying, though, is like how some Jews, particularly comedic Jews or left-wing Jews, they pretend to be like wasps on the one hand, how they're straight white men on the one hand, and then suddenly they're Jews making fun of Hitler, or making fun of Jewish penis sizes or whatever. And that's sort of like what happened. It's like a lot of the jokes that were happening on Comedy Central, they weren't transgressive, they weren't like interesting, they were just like the same old stuff, and it was just kind of boring. Like I guess that's my main knock on it. It was like boring and contrived and like just too much. Now, of course, I hope the show gets picked up. Like I hope Moshe Kasher has some sort of evolution on his try to being a progressive that's against like the crazy aspects of moving too far in the conversation. Basically it was like a progressive that was against like the excesses of progress. I don't know. It was weird. The whole situation was kind of strange. And so, anyways, it was a very interesting experience. Like, I don't know that I would do it again, but this is the thing that it's taught me. It's taught me that like a lot of my friends who like want television shows or who want like culturally to dominate television, that's not really where the conversation is. It's kind of not really all that interesting. It's kind of not all that much fun. It seemed like people were not having a good time producing this corporate show. Like they had to re-edit certain segments so that they could remove Bo Burnham's and Jen Kirkman's Netflix specials. It's just kind of interesting. I mean, it's like that you couldn't say, you could say whatever you wanted so long it was like done in a corporate way that was like only edgy so far. Like they couldn't say things like nigger. They couldn't say things like kike. They couldn't really do anything like that was like properly transgressive. And for me, comedy is like properly transgressive. It's supposed to be like edgy. And of course, after I left, all these people were like, "Oh man, we would have loved to hear more of what you were talking about because you were like kind of fighting the power structure." And it's like, yeah, I mean, look, I go where I'm invited. When people invite me to shit, I'm going to go to them. Now, of course, it's kind of sad in some sense that these people were like, causing some shit, and it was just kind of like, it was just too much, man. It was a little absurd to just see how this stuff was going, and I don't know. I just feel like these progressives. It's like the social justice warriors of the world. It's like, guys, you've just like the market is changing. People are just not interested in being tone policed anymore. It's over. Like Trump has clearly shown how over your game is. And of course, like the only show on Comedy Central that's like kind of interesting is either Tosh 2.0 or whatever, Tosh the Tosh Show, which is more or less an interesting kind of show, but it's more or less like basically riffing off content other people produce on the internet, and it's just kind of like not that interesting. I don't know any other way to describe it. And so the only show that's kind of really interesting is the Comedy Central generations, are the ones that they did for the fuck's the name of it, South Park. South Park is kind of interesting. I mean, it's kind of like transgressive. I mean, there was a generation of like white kids, predominantly white kids, who were the South Park conservatives, to use Brian Anderson's phrase. These were people who were very distrustful, that were very doubtful of kind of progressive pieties, and these are the folks who like went on and like did the Book of Mormon, which has been enormously successful. But the thing that they need to understand, like Comedy Central, a lot of these properties aren't understanding, is that they're losing talent to the HBOs of the world because they're controlling a lot of what people say, and they're controlling like, how edgy you can be, what kind of jokes you can make, which offenses you can make, and people were trying to like tone police various jokes there, trying to present like a cool girl image or trying to present like an image of diversity or what have you, and it was just like kind of weird. It's like, dude, just like be free, like speak the way you want to speak. This is America, like this is what it's about. Anywho, I had a good time. I enjoyed myself a little bit. I probably wouldn't do it again. I'm not sure. If they invite me, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it's just kind of like a long ass time to just sit around for like 22 minutes. And of course, they want to like, they want to make fun of like the white dude with the red hair. I mean, come on. This is just like these aren't fun. They're not even interesting anymore. Like the way in which the progressive era is over is kind of just not clear yet to a lot of different companies. But it's going to be clear when people start getting laid off, when shows don't get picked up. So I don't know. Might put a gun to my head and force me to bet. I bet that the show doesn't get picked up. 70-30. Bet that. But hey, it could be wrong. I mean, what do I know? I didn't I didn't quite think New Coke would catch on, but I thought we'd probably be using a lot more of the metric system now than we actually are. But well, anywho, gonna be doing a few more podcasts this week. Got some interesting thoughts on the Trump train, the evolution of Trump, the evolution of the culture of Trump as a political figure, a cultural figure, an economic figure. But, today I just kind of wanted to talk about the Comedy Central experience of, how one should go and invade sort of progressive social justice territory. I mean, they're always talking about safe space. They always want to like invite you to things. But of course, they just want to control what you're about. They want to control the message. And they have to do a lot of editing. They have to do a lot of presentation. Meanwhile, like the Gavin McInneses, the Milo Yiannopoulos of the world, hell, even the Ben Shapiros of the world, they just let it ride by like having a mic, just having a mic and letting people say what they want to say, doing what they want to do. And that's ultimately like why the right is kind of kicking ass right now. It lets people think what they want to think. It lets them challenge taboos. And in declining orders, a lot of the political questions that we think are settled aren't settled, and they're revealed to be unsettled. So, for instance, when Moshe Kasher is like, "Oh, I think you do all this work that's like against what was it? He said it is against on the wrong side of history." And I was like, well, I don't think history has like a side. I think it goes up and down. I think it goes around. I don't know what that even means anymore. The progressive view is just like every shit's just getting better, or we're just gonna fight, like have a progressive view, we're gonna sweeping view into the future. Call me. I call bullshit on that. Regimes collapse. There's cycles to business. There's cycles to politics. There's cycles to cycles. I mean, fuck. So I don't know. I don't buy it. I think it's absurd. But hey, Moshe Kasher was nice enough to invite me on. He seemed like a nice guy. Congrats on getting married. I think he got married like last year. And frankly, I would have liked to hear more Bo Burnham stuff. Burnham came up and like hugged me, and he's like, "Oh, I just want to hug you because you're a contrarian asshole like me." And it's like, bro, you were tone police. Like they came after you for saying the shit that you wanted to say, and you're still so fucking weak at Westminster College. They came after you for like being ironic, for having fun. Why don't you just have fun, man? Like, why don't you just like let your freak flag fly and stop trying to be like so like color within the lines? It's just not interesting. You know what I mean? Like, I like your music, man. Like, it's kind of weird. It's kind of strange. The white dude rapping from Massachusetts. Like, I think it's funny. I don't know. It's a little strange. more power to you. And probably the reason that you have such political power or such cultural power relative to the others, and why you have so many, you have a million followers versus the other folks who've got like 100,000 something. Part of the reason you've got that is because you're different. You got a different, unique voice, and so you shouldn't try and like hide that. You should just be yourself. Let your freak flag fly. Anyway, this podcast has gone on way too long. I had some drinks at Row. I had a good time. I mean, I had a good time seeing how the other half lives and invading their territory. And they're like, "Oh, you're so brave. You're so brave." It's like, come on, like, I'm living the life of my dreams. Everything's cool. Besides, we're gonna make America great again, anyways. So, yeah, it's gonna be fun. Well, that's it for today. Hope to do a few more of these later in the week, and chat soon. Bye.